You've probably heard before the saying that life is a journey. And in this journey, we naturally aspire to pursue certain goals, certain dreams, such as fame, wealth, or success in general. And I used to think that devoting myself to these would ultimately lead to my way of fulfillment through working hard or going to a top university. At least that is what I saw when looking at my friends, family, or society in general. But there was one day in my life, or more precisely, one moment, when I questioned this notion. When I was about 24 years old, I was working and studying in Denmark, a country in the north of Europe. And while there, after finishing my studies, or didn't have exams to do, I used to take a train to work. Usually, I had to wake up very early in the morning, and as a result, I was usually the only passenger, and it was eerily quiet. The sun still didn't come up. And in this quietness, in this solitude that I was in, it had me contemplate my life, where I was going. I felt like while I was thinking about who I was and where I was in my life, it sort of had this void or emptiness in me. Even though I was studying at a top university, I had a well-paying job with generous colleagues, and on top of that, I had a good career prospect in the future, and I was living in the happiest nation in the world at the time. But the irony of this story is that even though I was in the happiest nation in the world, I didn't feel happy at all. And ultimately, it really didn't lead to any fulfillment, despite achieving all the things that I sort of wanted. Now, looking back, I see that there are certain choices in life that I have made that led me to this point in life. And I realized that there are several mistakes that I've made. And I would like to share 3 attributes that have led me here in life. The first one I came to discover when I was about 8 years old. I was living in Hungary, where I was born and raised up eventually. But while I was there, my parents went on a trip to Africa, and they came back with an experience that changed the whole family's life for good. When they came back, they talked a lot, and they sat down, told me to sit down in the living room, and they were about to tell me something that would change my life forever. These words I would never forget. They said that we're going to leave. Now, little did I know that leaving was sort of like an escape call from their financial and social difficulties that they were facing in Hungary at the time. And that leaving would evidently mean leaving everyone and everything we know behind and move 8,000 kilometers to a different country that is known as South Africa. It was a strange turn of events. Now, of course, in the minds of a child, you interpret this in a different way. You might think that Africa is this wildland where you go pet tigers, chase elephants, or just have drinkings, in the wilderness. Part of it is true. But in reality, it was more like long highways, luxury hotels, high skyscrapers. But in reality, what I discovered is that when starting a new life from rock bottom, from my whole family, we somehow had to find something. And this is where my first attribute comes into picture, and that is finding your purpose. Now, the first mistake that we've made was actually thinking that in order to find your purpose, find meaning in life, you somehow have to consolidate your worth. You have to show society that you are worthy. And I think it comes down to something even simpler than that, and that is through giving, through helping others. Using your strengths, your skills, what you will use in your jobs in the future, is basically the same as helping others. Even through charity, you keep on giving. Helping others is one of the ways that I've learned to find my purpose. Ever since my childhood, I had sort of like a wild imagination, and I was in love with writing stories, novels. But over the years, I've developed the skill to write blogs, articles, journals. And there was no greater feeling in life when someone came to me and said that my content was interesting, useful, and even helpful. The second attribute towards a fulfilling life, I came to discover many years later, approximately 12 years later, when I went to study in Denmark. Finally, I was out of the family nest, no more mom and dad, no more telling me what to do. Finally, great. But while I was there, I had this focus on my mind that I have to become someone great, have to stand out from the crowd and push myself to the limit of my endurance and sort of like show everyone who I really am. While this might not be a bad thing to show ambition, but it shouldn't really be, I think, the primary focus of anyone. And this is where my second attribute comes into the picture. Building meaningful relationships. Now, this I don't really mean by boyfriend or girlfriend, but with friends, with people, with anyone you know, acquaintances, or people in general. Having a certain bond with others, having a certain affinity with the person standing next to you, shows some sort of value between you and the other person. The reason I'm talking about this is because I came to realize the absence of meaningful relationships. Because going back to the point that I was 24 years old, taking that train, all by myself, alone, even though I was going to work, to a well-paying job, it seemed all empty. And now I would like to talk about my final attribute. And you might be thinking that the final attribute might sound a little bit strange, but I think this is the most important out of all of them. And this is basically narrating your stories. Stories are messages. Stories are things that we talk about. It builds a narrative. It creates bonds between people. It tells you who you are and shows who you are to others. Stories throughout my life helped me stand out, and we all have individual experiences, individual things that we have discovered. For me, I had the opportunity to live all across Europe, all the way down to Africa, and even here in China. And the people I've met, the experiences that I've gained, helped me build up a certain story in my life. And I came to realize the importance of these stories when it was absent from my life. When I graduated, I thought it would be time to settle down, get into a comfort zone, and start a corporate life, which was sort of like a big mistake for me, because it felt like a repetitive cycle of monotony that kept on going on and on and on until end, and there was nothing new stories to discover, to talk about. And this is why I feel like this is the most crucial ones, when you try to express yourself. It brings sort of clarity to who you are. Cultivating your purpose, building meaningful relationships, and fabricating your stories. I believe, amongst many others, these are the three attributes that can create sort of like a chain reaction in your life and help you to a more fulfilling life. I know that true fulfillment is something that's really, really difficult to find. But even pursuing it, even setting yourself on the path, is a step worth taking in this life. Thank you very much.